some of the most disciplined, health conscious vegan influencers on the internet are breaking down all over in the past couple years. And you were told that this diet was supposed to make you healthier, right? So what's actually going on with the vegan community in general? Because this isn't just happening to one person, right? This keeps happening. So this girl, she was doing everything right. Strict, raw vegan, very clean, fully committed for years and years. And she died at 27 years old. And still, people say it wasn't the diet. Now, look, before we go any further, I want to be clear because this is not a hit piece. This is not about attacking vegans even. And this is definitely not me saying that every single vegan out there is unhealthy. Because really what it comes down to is patterns. So this is a pattern that keeps repeating and we need to figure out why. You know, across different people, different countries, different lifestyles, but somehow the same outcome. And I'm going to show you just a few cases, and these are pretty high, influential people like the influencers, right? And this is just in recent time from those, bigger vegan influencers out there. So usually they're YouTube and Instagram influencers these days. This is what we see, right? So we're going to break it down. This is purely patterns. So keep that in mind. Now, one of the more popular reports that I saw about, 4 months ago or so, this was a young woman who was fully committed to a fruitarian lifestyle since her late teens. And over time, this fruitarian lifestyle became her everything, right? Her identity, her awakening and new start from one of her first posts on her Instagram account. And she eventually traveled to Bali, Indonesia, of course, to be around other people living the same way, vegans, right? These hippie communities, they're very welcoming. And, I think the best ones I've been involved with are, aligned with their nature and their spirit. Like back in Tulum, I met some truly amazing people just in tune with their physical and their spiritual nature. But even to some of them, they know that this vegan mind trap, is just a spiritual mind trap that attacks their physical body, like super base people. Anyways, this girl, Carolina from Poland, people in the village there in Indonesia, Bali, described her as extremely frail, of course, emaciated. And anyone that saw her Instagram would describe her that way, People say she was barely able to walk and had to be carried into her room. And she later passed away. She was unalived at 27 years old. And of course, after that, when the news of her came out, I saw this on Facebook multiple times, all of these vegans across the internet said, it wasn't the diet. So let's go to another case. Her name is Zana. And this is another long-term vegan influencer. And this girl, Zana, she's from Russia, actually. So she was over a decade, like 10 years deep into this vegan lifestyle. She was extremely disciplined. And over time, her diet just tended to go more extreme and more extreme. So, she would go to only fruits, of course. This is a pattern we see, right? Only seeds and then only juices, right? Like no using your teeth. Like, where's the logic in this? But anyways, her friends described her, just looking starved and exhausted all the time. And yet, online through her Instagram commenters, it was framed as like deep commitment, right? As like purity, as doing it the right way. And she was showing people her lifestyle, right? With each post of her, fruit bowls or smoothies, people would, enable her. But she didn't even make it to age 40. Now look, it's always sad and horrible when these people sacrifice their entire life. They give their entire life to their movement, to their values. And it's a movement and value set that's not truly based in health. And we know, because these long-term vegans, we know the solution once they stop doing what's killing them, right? What's aging them quicker? What's causing this dysfunction at a whole general level, right? So let's get into it. Take Giovanna Mendoza. millions of followers across Instagram, YouTube, over 6 years of promoting raw veganism. She was, of course, doing everything right in these vegan circles until her health started collapsing, coming down. Her hormones, anemia, gut issues, all exacerbated. And I don't doubt any nutrition worth their salt would tell her to start introducing animal foods. But instead of talking about this openly, she tried to hide it. Now, she was caught on camera. This was like a big scandal, apparently. I didn't hear about it at the time. But she was caught trying to conceal a plate of fish. Now, think about that. Not just her being sick because of being raw vegan for 6 years, but feeling like you have to hide the solution to your health because your vegan fans would rather watch you suffer for the cause. That's how you know veganism is a cult, man. Like, let's go into Tim Sheaf. He's a very specific case. He was a high-level athlete, like a long-distance runner, I believe. He was very disciplined, very respected in the vegan community, at least. And when his health declined, he didn't just quit, of course, right? He tried everything to fix it along the vegan options. And honestly, there's a lot of creative ways to do it, right? There's a lot of good supplements that you can try to still stay vegan. He did different types of vegan diets. He even resorted to fasting, and I'm talking extreme fasting. He did a 35-day water fast. No food, just water, 35 days. Imagine that. So he tried everything over and over again because to Tim, walking away meant more than just changing food to finally thrive. It's the principle and the identity that surpass the true value of health when this comes up, right? Tim ended up reintroducing animal foods and reported a strong rebound in his health and athletic performance. And at the end of it, he had to publicly apologize to the vegan community after appearing in multiple vegan documentaries, including What the Health, which was like one of those bigger, success kind of documentaries during that Netflix push of just woke vegan ideology, right? But just to be another public representative of that vegan failure manifesting years later. And then you go to Bonnie Rebecca and Elise Parker. I could go on and on. It's just the same pattern. The initial success, the energy and clarity that people get, which I think it's just from fasting, honestly. The benefits are very similar. Anyways, slowly over time, things start to go downhill, right? The hormones act up, the digestion issues, gut issues, energy just gets tanked. And then when they finally choose their health, they don't get support from their base anymore, right? They get publicly attacked by their vegan fans, right? Instead of being accepted for doing what will help them just live their best life, right? Now, at this point, the vegans, of course, out there will just say, well, they did veganism wrong. That's why it didn't work for them. And on the surface, it sounds kind of reasonable, right? Until you realize this explanation just shows up every single time. This is what it's all boiled down to. Like, they say this excuse with everything. And it just doesn't address all of the individual, nutritional needs. It doesn't give the individual their due. So maybe the real question is, why do so many people end up in the same frickin' place? And I'm not going to go into the nutrition because I think that's just obviously the issue, right? Vegans just, becoming unalived by their ideology. We know it's nutritional, right? The reason I want to talk about is specifically the vegan mind virus. And I say mind virus because this stops being about food and it starts really just morphing into just psychology, right? So let's get into it. First issue is their identity. This isn't just what you eat anymore. It's who you are. So they frame it as, I'm disciplined, I'm compassionate, I'm aware. This becomes their identity. And once that identity is built up, any threat to their diet feels like a threat to them directly, right? Second, it's the moral superiority loop is what I'll call it. So you're basically not just eating differently. You're seen as a better person for doing it. And you get to cash in every time that you tell someone that you're a vegan, right?
Jeez, I'm vegan.
All right.
I'm vegan.
So you think that that label makes you more ethical, more like conscious, and really just more woke, which is a positive, I guess, in their mind, right? And other vegans, right? To other vegans are people who don't even care. They'll just give you, like, a little golf clap because they don't want to get into it with you, right? And that can create reinforcement. It, influences the validation. It enhances approval socially, right? And now you're not just maintaining a diet, you're maintaining that moral identity, which is giving you that feeling of self-righteousness. So third, this is like the social lock-in and accountability from people's fan bases, quote unquote. So if your audience follows you because you're a vegan, you don't just lose the diet if you quit, right? You lose your platform, you lose your community, you lose your income for all of these influencers, right? And now staying vegan becomes quite literally freaking survival because that's your life, that's your livelihood. And fourth part of this mind virus is simply just the fear of being wrong publicly. So, it's one thing to be wrong in private, but it's a whole other thing to be wrong in front of like thousands or millions of people, right? So what happens? People end up doubling down. They rationalize against everything, even facts, staring at them blank in the face. They go deeper on their excuses and sidestep the logic and just flat out health solutions altogether. And this usually leads to further escalation of being extreme. So usually just into the higher status tiers of veganism. So think vegetarian becomes vegan. Vegan becomes raw vegan. And then raw vegan becomes like fruitarian. I don't know why they go all the way to fruitarian before they get unalived. But, it gets that far. And sometimes even fasting. Because if that's not working, the assumption is I just need to try harder instead of think differently, right? It's not like, oh, something's off. Maybe I should get a blood work panel done. And it's certainly not along the thought lines of, well, meat and animal foods is literally what sustains the meat on my body and my brain. So, this hardly ever occurs to them. And this is when the biology actually really does come in, because your body doesn't just run on beliefs, right, and your values. It runs on freaking nutrients, the vitamin B12s, DHA, EPA, bioavailable iron, choline, creatine, essential amino acids. And when these start dropping from your stores over years and years, it doesn't just affect your body, it affects your freaking brain. And what does your brain affect? Freaking everything, your entire thought process. And this is what I feel like not enough people talk about, because the deficiencies don't make you weak physically only, right? They change how you freaking think. And this is one of the steps of living in a cult. One of the ways that cult members have an upper hand on people is they take away or they deprive them of sleep and rest and even nutrients, of course, at a plain level. So low vitamin B12, this impacts not only your memory, but your mood and your cognition too, just thinking clearly in general. And the low DHA and EPA, the omega-3s, those affect the brain structures and just your emotional regulation straight up. And of course, low iron, it basically cuts off the oxygen supply to the brain and the body, creating, that brain fog and fatigue that, you just can't function. Low choline, that impacts the neurotransmitters straight up. And low creatine, it reduces brain energy levels, and just the symptoms of depression become more common with low creatine levels. So think about this very clearly. You're already locked in on an identity if you're vegan and you have a platform and people know you as a vegan. You're already being validated socially for it, right? But you're afraid to be wrong. And now your brain itself, because of your way of life, is underfueled and, has tons of nutrient deficiencies. So you have improper critical thinking, more fatigue, more, emotionally acting out, like hormone dysfunction, more dependence on like your routine and just belief of yourself. So instead of questioning what's actually happening to your body and your brain, you cling to it even harder. Not because you're weak per se, not because you're inherently stupid or you started off stupid, but because your biology and your brain is no longer functioning at that higher level.
So the message for the world is for the respect of Pachamama, the respect of Salve Madre, for creating a greener world and a peaceful world by
One eternity later.
the human species specific diet, the fruits. The fruits are needed to change the bad eating habits and the animal
And that's the trap of this vegan mind virus. And that's why this pattern keeps repeating until some people don't even make it. And look, this isn't about attacking people. This is simply about understanding why. Because in the beginning, these people, all of them, super smart, beautiful, caring, disciplined, well-intentioned people, they end up stuck. So, the real question, it becomes, at what freaking point do we stop defending this belief in just the whole vegan movement for health and just start listening to our body as an individual? Because your body doesn't care about animal ethics. It responds to what you give it or what you don't, right? And if these stories simply show us anything clearly, pattern to pattern, it's that ignoring your health, your brain, and your body has consequences. Not always immediately, but eventually. And the people who suffer the most are usually the ones who believed with the hardest conviction, right? So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe for the algorithm. What are your thoughts? Have you been vegan before? Are you ex-vegan? Do you have many friends that used to be vegan and then all of a sudden stopped posting their food as often? And then you ask them, over time, oh, what, are you still a vegan? And they're like, oh no, I gave that up years ago. What happened? Let me hear it. I want to hear all your guys' stories. I read all the comments. So thank you again for your support. And really, if there's one thing that I want to end on, I just want to say, when you talk to vegans, it's usually easy to just be kind of hateful and just, shit on them, right? But the only way to get through to people to the point where this won't freaking kill them is to show compassion, right? And it's going to be hard because these vegans, if they're deep into it, they're operating on their lower level functioning brains, right? They're going to be, on that reptilian like brain cycle, right? But you have to show compassion and at least try to lead them to knowledge and not just physically or not just, emotionally or verbally assault them for their choices. I don't think that shaming someone into living a better life is going to help. I think leading them to water and eventually having that more positive mindset that leads them to it, or at least paints the picture of them to that solution, I think that's the only way to handle this, really. So when you interact with vegans on the internet, please show compassion, because that's the only way that's, I think, is going to fix it for them, right? I stood by, I talked about my story, how my mom was vegan for 7 years. And, I never caved to telling her that the vegan diet was healthy, because I knew it wasn't the case. I just knew it. And then, the last 2 years of her being vegan, I didn't have to say anything. She knew that shit was messed up, so she had to fix it. And thank God that she didn't go deeper into clinging into this extreme, viewpoint, this extreme way of life where people are like incentivizing you to just fall on the sword for the movement, right? So that's it. Be civil in the comments. That's all I'll say. Thank you guys again. Peace.